So I came across Wreck-It Ralph 2 on TV the other day, and I realized something about that movie that I hadn't thought about before. The guest video game characters that they use to try to make the arcade setting feel more authentic, they don't do anything in either of these two movies. I mean, the only one I can think of that's actually pretty important would be Q*bert going to tell Felix that Ralph game jumped. Now, we all know that this movie takes the idea of the arcades and completely abandons it to focus on the internet and, more obnoxiously, Disney's massive IP library. This movie really is just Disney patting itself on the back, and the most obvious evidence of this is the fact that they put every Disney princess in existence up until that point in this movie to interact with each other, and more specifically so they could meet Vanellope and team up at the end of the movie. Now, I actually think that, as much of a marketing ploy as it was, the Disney princess stuff was handled fairly well. But by the end of this movie, you completely forget about all of the video game characters that you saw at the beginning of the movie. Sure, seeing Ariel and Mulan and Moana and Merida all interact with each other is fine and dandy, but Chun-Li is in this film. Now think about that. All of the Disney princesses get this big team-up action sequence, and Chun-Li, the strongest woman in the world, gets asked if she wants to adopt some of the kids from Sugar Rush. What kind of crap is that? You've got one of the most iconic video game characters of all time, and you have her stuck babysitting? Which brings us to the topic of this video. Which of the Disney princesses could take Chun-Li in a fight? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go down the list of all of the Disney princesses that were featured in Wreck-It Ralph since Chun-Li was in that movie, and we're going to see which one of them would actually stand a chance to go one-on-one with the world's strongest woman. First up, we've got Snow White, and this is probably the easiest one to decide. No. Snow White's whole thing is her innocence and her purity, so I doubt she would even accept an aggressive checkers match against Chun-Li. Snow White's just a girl who lives in the woods. I mean, she seems to have some limited capacity to communicate with animals, so maybe she could convince some kind of poisonous snake or spider to kill Chun-Li for her, but she would never do that. She's too sweet for that. Plus, getting a poisonous animal to fight your battles for you wouldn't be allowed, because that's not actually you fighting the person, it would be you fighting against the animal, so not allowed. Now, what about Cinderella? She surely worked up some muscles doing all of the chores for her stepmother and her stepsisters. And we run into, again, the same problem here. She's just too nice. She's not going to try to throw hands with somebody that's a trained martial artist. Unless Chun-Li is really afraid of rats, then I just don't think that Cinderella can pull out the win. Now, what about Sleeping Beauty's Aurora? How would she handle herself in a street fight? Actually, I think the only thing Chun-Li would need to do is get her in a sleeper hold. Haha! Next up is Ariel, the Little Mermaid. How will this fight play out for somebody who used to live underwater? In her human form, Ariel will be quickly sleeping with the fishes. But if she's a mermaid, she can go and hide underwater as soon as the fight starts, and you just stalemate because neither opponent can do anything. Or maybe she could convince some sharks to try to eat Chun-Li, though I'm not sure that Chun-Li wouldn't be able to just take care of the sharks, and it wouldn't be a fair fight anyway, so whatever, I would give the win to Chun-Li. Next up is Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and while she was brave enough to stand up to Gaston in the movie, I don't think she could really do much against Chun-Li. This is yet another case of the problem with the Disney princess in the fight being that they don't have any combat abilities. Again, not fair, but you could possibly have her bring in the beasts to do her fighting for her, and I actually would argue that that might be an interesting fight. Chun-Li's strong for sure, but I could actually possibly see the beast being even stronger than she is, at least until she starts using those energy attacks. Like, I just don't think the beast could handle a Kikosho right to the face, but maybe I'm wrong. Either way, without help, Belle ain't winning. Now we have Jasmine from Aladdin, and she actually can get kind of aggressive. She actually did try to fight Jafar in the movie, and he just kind of swatted her away like a gnat. But hey, she's got the fighting spirit. I just don't think she could handle Chun-Li though. She could maybe ask the genie to turn her into one of the greatest martial artists to ever live, then that way she might actually win that fight. But if she can't get that wish, then Chun-Li's just gonna win again. Now let's talk about Pocahontas, the most controversial of all of the Disney princesses. She's a lover, not a fighter. The only thing she really wants to do is date a white guy. If her arranged marriage was still on the table, then Kocoum could have taught her some things, but Thomas ruined that for her, as well as almost started a war between her people and the settlers. But we're focusing on the important thing here: Pocahontas versus Chun-Li. Looks like this time Chun wins again, and another big problem we're seeing with these Disney princesses is a lot of them are more peaceful. They just don't want to fight. Next up is Mulan, and okay, we've got an actual soldier this time. She improved quickly in the military, she has weapons training, and she pretty much defeated Shan Yu all by herself. If we're talking about hand-to-hand combat, then I think Mulan might actually be able to hang with Chun-Li for a little while until she starts to turn things up. If Mulan is wielding a sword, then that might force Chun-Li to keep her distance and be unable to use her powerful legs, but if she starts throwing Kikokens, that's gonna break that sword and overwhelm Mulan eventually. So this time, even though we do actually have somebody who is trained to fight, I think Chun-Li is gonna take this one as well. Next is Tiana from The Princess and the Frog, and I think depending on which form she's in, this fight could go two different ways. If she's human, it ain't even a contest. But if she's a frog, she might have some agility advantage. If she's smaller and able to hop out of the way really quickly, then Chun-Li may not be able to land any attacks on her. And remember, we did see her and Naveen outmaneuver 3 Bayou Hunters out on the swamp, so if she can get Chun-Li's attacks to backfire against her, that might give her a big win. The problem is that if Chun-Li gets one attack in on her in a frog's body, it's gonna be ugly. Plus, we've seen Chun-Li take down multiple opponents by herself as well, so I would probably say she's got the advantage here, even if it might take her a little while to catch Tiana. Now we have Rapunzel, the girl with the long magical hair. Now we've seen Rapunzel use her hair in some pretty creative ways, and we can't forget about her trusty frying pan. That's her main weapon. Maybe Rapunzel can get Chun-Li tangled up in all of that hair, and then while she's trying to get herself free, you just whack her in the head with the frying pan and boom, you're the winner. But then you have to ask yourself, would Chun-Li ever really let herself be caught in such a hairy predicament? Laugh, you know that was funny. So this time I'm thinking that the hair could potentially be a little bit of an obstacle for Chun-Li, but she would overwhelm her eventually once she gets in close. Now we have my personal favorite Disney princess, the one that comes from Pixar, Merida from Brave. She's basically the best archer in that world, and if she can keep up with Chun-Li's speed, then it might tilt things in her favor. Plus, even if a few of Merida's arrows did hit Chun-Li, we saw in the Street Fighter II animated movie that she could take a few major lacerations and still win a fight. Merida's strength is long-distance combat, so unless she can manage to strike Chun-Li in her head or her heart, Chun-Li's just gonna get close and finish her off. Now I guess Wreck-It Ralph 2 does suggest that Vanellope does count as a Disney princess, so I guess we're gonna have to see how she would fare against Chun-Li too. Vanellope's glitching would be good for dodging out of the way, but I think that that's gonna be about it for her because I don't think she's got the strength to actually put up a fight. Like Belle and the Beast though, Vanellope could call on her old buddy Wreck-It Ralph to come in and fight for her. And we've seen how strong Ralph is. That could be a pretty entertaining fight too. But again, it wouldn't be fair. We're talking about just the princess versus Chun-Li here, so Chun-Li is taking another W. Now we've made it to the Frozen princesses, the first of which is Anna. And she's peppy, she's got a lot of spunk, but she ain't got no fight in her. I could see her just calling Elsa and telling her to take care of the problem for her, because Elsa's ice powers might actually prove difficult for Chun-Li to handle. Now this could actually be a really cool fight because while I don't think Elsa could handle Chun-Li in plain old fisticuffs, I think her ice powers might be able to overpower Chun-Li's energy attacks. And let's not forget that Elsa can actually create ice titans to fight on her behalf, and since those come from just her powers, those would actually be fair. But the key here is that Elsa has to make sure that Chun-Li doesn't get in too close. With those ice powers, Elsa could win. But as soon as Chun-Li gets in close, it's game over. And finally, we're down to the last of the princesses from the Wreck-It Ralph 2 movie, the girl who befriended the ocean, Moana. Now the ocean itself has helped Moana in a few different cases, but she doesn't control it. So if the water did interfere with the fight, it would be outside interference since the water has a mind of its own. It would be the same as if she had called in Maui to use his transformation powers to fight Chun-Li. It's another case where a substitution would make for a better fight, but if we're talking about the princesses, then she just doesn't stand a chance. And there you go, that's how some fights between a few Disney princesses and the strongest woman in the world, Chun-Li from Street Fighter, would go down. Of the future rulers that we looked at, I think the ones that stood the most chance of putting up any kind of a fight at all against Chun-Li would be Mulan, Merida, and maybe Rapunzel. But Elsa was the only one I thought could actually put up a decent challenge, and maybe even win. Well, what do you guys think? How do you feel about this kind of a matchup? Do you think that any of these Disney princesses actually could defeat Chun-Li? Thanks for watching this video, I really appreciate it. If you want to support my channel, then hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Now, I'm gonna go see what other Disney princesses we can line up to fight Chun-Li, because I bet Death Battle would get a ton of views if they lined up Chun-Li versus Sophia the First.